So I want to talk about a potential trade idea here for the Packers, give my thoughts whether I think it's a smart move or not a smart move. It came out yesterday from Adam Tyker at ESPN, and he reported this. The Kansas City Chiefs officially placed the non-exclusive franchise tag on cornerback L'Jarius Sneed on Monday. The non-exclusive tag allows Sneed to talk to other teams, who then could work out a trade with the Chiefs. A source told ESPN's Jeremy Fowler last week that the Chiefs had informed Sneed they were preparing to place the tag on him and were open to consummating a trade. Pending league approval, a new contract for Sneed could be worked out as part of a trade to kick in at the start of the new league year, which begins next Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. The source stressed to Fowler that a trade is very much on the table. If Sneed were to play the 2024 season on the franchise tag, his salary would be $19.8 million fully guaranteed. The deadline for teams to use the franchise tag on pending free agents is Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, which is today. So today is the final day teams can franchise tag players. So the Chiefs franchise tagged L'Jarius Sneed, but the idea of trading him seems very much on the table per that ESPN article. And apparently the Chiefs probably are going to focus, from what I've been reading, on bringing back Chris Jones, defensive lineman, and they don't want to spend up on both Sneed and Chris Jones, even though it's technically a possibility. And so when we look at the Packers coming into this next season, I do think cornerback is a need. Keyshawn Nixon is going to be a free agent. Packers, I guess, may or may not bring him back. If he's gone, they have a need there at the slot. And then if you look opposite side, on the outside of Jair Alexander, you have Carrington Valentine, who played pretty good at times, but I still think you could bring some competition in for that position. You got Eric Stokes on the other side as well, who has dealt with tons of injuries. Not sure if he's going to ever get back to his former first-year self where he's playing really, really well. It's a possibility, but with his injury history, there is some uncertainty there. And so the Packers, I think, need some more cornerback depth. And L'Jarius Sneed, there's no doubt if he came to Green Bay, the Packers defense would get better. Sneed is one of the better cornerbacks in the league. If you look at the free agents, PFF ranked him number 10 overall among all positions. So he's a pretty solid cornerback. And let me just read here from PFF their thoughts on Sneed. They say this: Sneed was a fixture out wide in 2023 after lining up primarily in the slot over his first 3 seasons, and he held up quite well in several tough matchups. Defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo asks a lot of his cornerbacks, and Sneed is sticky in coverage, getting into receivers' hip pockets and becoming very hard to shake with lateral movement or in the air at the catch point. Sneed could stand to cut down on penalties, but his aggressive nature would be welcome on many teams, as his inside-out versatility is a nice benefit as well. And so the thing with Sneed is that you'd have to trade draft capital for Sneed, and if he already had, if he was on some kind of cheap contract, maybe you have to give up a higher pick, like a first-round pick. But considering you're going to have to pay this guy if you bring him in, unless you want him to play on the tag, which I'm not sure why you want him to play on that, because the tag is, I'm pretty sure it all counts against the cap in that year. And so odds are, if the Packers wanted Sneed, they'd have to trade a pick and then give him some kind of long-term extension, which will probably be pretty expensive. And so that's the question you have to ask yourselves is giving up a pick and having to give a big contract to another cornerback when the Packers are already paying Jair Alexander a lot of money, is that the best use of resources? And so no doubt bringing Sneed in without looking at the money, without looking at capital, of course, Packers will get better. He's a very good cornerback, and I would love to see him on this Packers defense. I'm always for the Packers adding tons of talent. The question is, do you want to trade maybe a second-round pick and then have to pay him? I'm not sure how much he'll get. He's going to get a lot of money. Are you willing to give that much for L'Jarius Sneed to come into Green Bay? And that's where I'm not so sure it's the best use of resources. And I really like what the Packers did at wide receiver these past couple seasons, using a ton of draft capital on wideouts, and now the Packers are set. They're barely paying their receivers, one of the cheapest wide receiver rooms in the NFL, because they drafted Watson round 2, Romeo Doubs round 4, Jaden Reed last year round 2, Dontavian Wicks round 5. And so I think that it could make more sense, as I'm thinking through this, to use some of your early draft picks on at least a cornerback, maybe draft one later as well. A guy like Cooper DeJean, who I know lots of Packers fans like, I myself think he would be a great fit here in Green Bay. And let's say you use your first-round pick on DeJean if he's sitting there at 25. You get a really, really cheap cornerback there and on a rookie deal. And then you don't have to pay a cornerback a ton of money. You could use that money elsewhere. And that's really the question is, where do the Packers want to spend up? Do they want to, pay a guy a big kind of contract this offseason, whether it's a trade for a player like a Sneed or a free agent safety? Do they want to give out a big contract? Because I think at times past, we've seen a few of those given out by Gutekunst a few years back with, Zadarius Smith, Preston Smith, Adrian Amos all coming in. I think was that 2019, I believe, 2018, 2019. And, it's very exciting when the Packers make those kind of moves. The Packers last year didn't really make any massive kind of splash free agent moves because they didn't have a ton of money because of the Aaron Rodgers $40 million dead cap hit. But the Packers do have a little bit more flexibility this offseason. But the thing is, I think the best position to spend up here for the Packers team would be safety. Even though Sneed would make this defense better, I would rather the Packers use that money on a safety just because if you bring in enough cornerback competition, whether that's a cheaper free agent along with lots of maybe a few cornerbacks, a couple cornerbacks in the draft, you bring in competition there and you bring that, against guys like Valentine, Eric Stokes, I feel like a couple guys could rise to the top and you could still have a pretty solid Packers defense because you can't spend, $20+ million on every position. Clearly, you have a salary cap for a reason, and teams have to sort of figure out where do they want to invest all that capital because you can't have, too many guys playing on massive deals. You also have to factor in Kenny Clark after this next season is going to be a free agent. The Packers probably have to plan whether or not they want to bring him back on a long-term extension and spend a lot of money there. They're also going to have to pay Jordan Love. They probably will when May comes around, when they're actually able to do that extension, because a year had to go by from when he signed his last extension. I expect Jordan Love to make $50 million a year, probably sign a 4 or 5 year deal with the Packers. And so that's not necessarily going to hold them back, I think, from this year spending in free agency, but they have to make some decisions. And while they could trade for Sneed, I think I would use my money elsewhere. But if this news came out, that's exciting. Anytime you land some kind of big time name and you bring them to their defense, it's always exciting no matter how much money capital costs. But those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think about this potential trade. You like it? Do you not like it? And feel free to subscribe if you want to stay up to date with all Packers news. Make sure you turn on the post notifications. That way, anytime news comes out, you'll get notified. I make a video pretty quickly after it comes out, so you'll never miss any Packers news as long as you have those post notifications turned on. But that is it for this video. I'll see you guys next time.